So before we begin, teachers and teachers to be, I believe there are a lot of teachers here. Imagine yourself in a class of 31 students, all right? I'm about to narrate Esme Codell. Now, close your eyes and listen to my voice as if it's your voice, all right? Here we go. 31 chances, 31 futures, our futures. It's an almost psychotic feeling, believing that part of their lives belongs to me. Everything they become, I become, and everything about me, they helped to create. Now gently open your eyes. Remember, my dear teachers, you open doors to bright futures. What you're acquiring as a student here now is not just a skill, it's an eternal superpower to change the world. And because the world needs its superheroes, you guys, we have arranged this seminar to help you sustain yourself no matter how hard this pandemic becomes. With that, I warmly welcome you. Talking about the Institute, with over 20 years of experience and an impressive output of over 5,000 teachers to the nation, local and international, St. George International Teacher Training Institute offers programs at the levels of foundation, diploma, bachelor's, and postgraduate in IELTS, English as a second language, English also as a foreign language, early childhood, pre-primary, and Montessori. You are completely secured because these programs are accredited by City and Guilds UK, OTHM UK, Pearson UK, London Teacher Training College UK, Lincoln University Malaysia, Children's Secretariat Sri Lanka, Tertiary and Vocational Education Commission Sri Lanka. And it doesn't end there. As a New Year initiative, St. George International Teacher Training Institute now also provides schools of business and computing. That I'm excited to introduce to you our keynote speakers. Professor Marcos Sadao Maekawa. He's a PhD researcher at Keio University and also a lecturer at Akita International University and Digital Hollywood University Graduate School. We also have Miss Nicola Nakashima. I'm personally a student of hers, and she is a senior lecturer, adult educationist, and an academic coach. Going into the details of who they are, starting with Professor Marcos Sadao Maekawa, he was born and raised in Sao Paulo, Brazil. He graduated with a degree in architecture and urbanism at the University of Sao Paulo in 1996. Moved to Tokyo in 1997 and worked with graphic editorial design. In 2008, Marcos joined the first batch of students in Keio Media Design, earned his master's degree in 2010 and his PhD in 2016. His research focused on the design of global education for younger generations, being kindergarten to grade 12, in a highly connected society. His work experience includes coordination of global educational programs, academic courses, and projects in collaboration with international organizations and educational institutions. His research interests are at the intersection of global society, diversity and inclusion, and media design. Coming to Miss Nicola Nakashima, she is a senior lecturer at St. George's International Teacher Training Institute and is the module leader for academic writing and research methods in education. She is an adult educationist and an expert personal tutor with close to a decade of teaching experience in the higher education sector of Sri Lanka. Throughout her career, she has inspired and changed the lives of over 5,000 adult learners. She creates outstanding student-centered learning environments through blended learning platforms. Her research interests include social constructivist learning, self-regulated learning strategies for adult blended learners. All right. So the awesome thing about online seminars is that you're always in the front seat. You don't have to fight for it. You're right in the front. This gives you the privilege to ask whatever the questions you have directly from your keynote speakers. So don't miss out, guys. Throw your questions, all of them. at your keynote speakers. So with that, to begin, I first invite Professor Sadao to address you. And just to give a heads up, Professor Sadao will speak from his own experience of how this pandemic changed the way he thought and how it changed the lives of other teachers. And this struggle is not just among students. The teachers themselves are struggling. So you students transitioning into becoming teachers someday, I think Professor Sadao will have great insights to how you should move yourself forward during times like this. Professor Sadao, you may take over.
Thank you so much for the very nice introduction. So, and for all of you, Ayubowan.
Ayubowan.
Ayubowan. I'm super happy to be here to talking to you, and I'd like to first thanks Nicola for inviting me to be here with her to to share the stage in this webinar. So today, as Mr. Trishal introduced, I'm going to talk about my own experience about teaching during the pandemic, the challenges and lessons of teaching in a social distance society. Well, my name is Marcos Sadao. You can call me Marcos, you can call me Sadao. And as he mentioned also, I was born and raised in Brazil. And I have also a Brazilian citizen. I mean, I grew up as a Brazilian citizen. That's why my name is Marcos. And my real name is Marcos, although I look like 100% Japanese. I am 100% Japanese. But anyway, I'm a researcher in Keio University, and I'm a lecturer in Akita University and Digital Hollywood grad school. I'd like to start my presentation asking you one question for the audience. Would you please tell me what were the best experiences or memories you have from 2020? You can think about that, and if possible, please share in the chat. It can be very short. You don't need to write long phrases. How about you, Nicola? What were your best memories of 2020?
So on the 13th of March, I took my 2 Rottweilers and we went 3.5-hour drive down south to the beach. And then that weekend, we went into lockdown. So that was the last good memory of being able to travel with no restrictions of COVID.
Wow, your best memory in 2020 was like more than 1 year ago. So back in March.
Yes.
Okay, how about you, Trishal?
Very simple. It's getting to go to the gym consistently. Now it just keeps breaking. I used to be in the best shape of my life back in 2020, but now after the lockdown and all that, just a little off now.
Good. Yeah. So yeah, in fact, it's very hard when people ask this question. It's very hard to find one good memory of 2020. Let me share a little bit about mine. Here is me in the center of this picture, and as you can see in the board here is Postgraduate Institute of Science of University of Peladenia. In fact, I went to Sri Lanka last year. I was in Sri Lanka last year in February, and I visited Kandy City. And then it was for my research for a project I have with Peladena University. And we visited elementary schools there. We meet the children, we meet teachers there. And you can see we were not wearing masks because it was February. So the situation of COVID was not that bad in Sri Lanka. And even in Japan, it was not that bad. And this is me having dinner with Nicola in Colombo in the very end of my stay there in Sri Lanka. However, as we all know, 2020 was marked by the coronavirus and the COVID-19. And it changed the way we live, the way we study, the way we work, the way we do things, the way we socialize with people, even with our families. So, and it was a big struggle for all of us, including myself, after coming back from Sri Lanka to Japan. So I went to, after coming back to Japan from my trip for Sri Lanka, I had to go back to work. The academic year here in Japan starts in April. When I came back, we were aware of the spread of the pandemic around the world. So we had to prepare, okay, what are you going to do? And what if students cannot come to the school? And what if we, teachers and faculties, cannot go to the school to teach anymore? Then we start preparing a plan B. But before going to the details of how we planned everything, I'd like to share a little bit about my own background, my research background, that will be direct linked to the way we made strategies to overcome the pandemic or the teaching during the pandemic. So I went to master's and PhD in Keio University in the Grad School of Media Design. And after graduating, after finishing my PhD, I taught for 5 years until March this year as a full-time senior lecturer in Keio Video Design. And during my stay, I stayed there for 13 years, 2 years for master, 6 years for my PhD course, and then 5 years as a full-time faculty. So, and I worked closely with the Global Education Project. The Global Education Project slogan, catchphrase is Global Education for Global Issues. What that means, we believe that with all the transformations that the world has been experiencing in the past decades, globalization, the development of technology, it brought so many good things for us. It transformed the way we live, the way we study, the way we do things. But on the other hand, we had a lot of new problems coming up. And then those problems could not be solved as the manual said, as the manual as our previous experience thing. So we believe that we needed to know how to look for new solutions to solve those global issues, those new problems, and to nurture a generation of people, of citizens who could solve those problems. We need global education, to provide global education. In fact, that concern was not only from our side, UNESCO and the whole world was already aware of that. So just to give you a glance of what that means, the UN, the United Nations and UNESCO, they had some movements to spread education for sustainable development that we call ESD. So we started back in 2005, a decade for sustainable development. That was 10 years to spread education, the sustainable development around the world. In 2015 to 19, there was a global action program in education for sustainable development to see what were the lessons learned from that decade, and that served the base as a base for the ESD for 2013. And that is very much related with the Sustainable Development goals that we call the SDGs. I'm pretty sure that you are very familiar with that. And the goal of the Sustainable Development Goals is to make the world a better place. It's a global agreement with all UN members around the world to make the world a better place for everyone to live until 2013. So we can leave a better world for the next generations. So as you can see here, ability to think critically, ability to plan with anticipation of a future scenario, multidimensional and integrative thinking, communication skills, ability to cooperate with others, respectful of relations and connections, and proactive participation. As you can see, there's no math or national language or science in there, just because this is what the education should deliver. But these are also skills that students and all citizens should have to be able to deal with those problems and to find solutions for the future. But how can we incorporate those kind of skills and abilities in the curriculum, in the education curriculum? Is that really taught at home? Is that really, should that be taught at the school? We believe that there are many ways to deliver or to foster those kind of abilities in younger generations. So this was the question that I had when I started my research. What if we could connect schools around the world so students could teach and learn from each other on the internet? So it could be a real global education. They could share their problems, they could teach each other, they could learn from each other. And that's all about what those abilities are, about cooperating to find new solutions for those new problems. Another thing that I was very much interested in, and I learned a lot during my master's and my PhD, and I still learn, is about design thinking. Do you know what design thinking means? Have you ever heard about what design thinking means? Giving a brief glance of what design thinking is, the IDEO is one design firm, is a global design firm, very famous, and the founders of IDEO were the kind of the original creators of this methodology. A design and IDEO, that is this design firm, they define design thinking as is about believing we can make a difference and having an intentional process in order to get to new relevant solutions that create positive impact. And then you can say, okay, Marcos, but okay, what that has to do with education? And then I have another definition of design thinking by Professor Shelley Goldman from Stanford University. She's professor from the Graduate School of Education in Stanford University. She mentioned in one of her books that design thinking is a process, a set of steps and mindsets that can be developed in a course of problem solving for innovation. And her books and her research was all about how to bring design thinking to the classrooms, to help teachers to be more creative, to be more innovative, to be more flexible, to deal with the struggles we have in this highly connected and technological world. Design thinking is all about human-centered design. And when I say design, it's not about like artistic expression. It's not about doing beautiful things, nice colors, nice formats, but it's all about problem solving, find solutions for problem solving. So that methodology is all about being human-centered. We look at the user. The center of the solutions is always the user, the person who is going to use that design or to take advantage of that design to solve problems. Another keyword is experimentation. So it's all about giving format to your ideas, put in practice, so you can get feedback and check if your ideas, what you are creating is okay or it's not okay, or if it needs improvement, or what kind of improvements. And another key point for design thinking is creativity based on empathy, not in expertise. So people tend to try to solve problems based on their own experience. Oh, so from the past, from a long, long time ago, they used to do things like that. And now with this problem, probably this kind of solution would help. Okay, but how about the person who is really is struggling with this problem? Will this person be able to really get the problem solved, or does this really fit the problems and the new challenges, etc., etc. And these are the 4 steps. So empathize with the user, so we can understand that putting yourself on the user shoes, the people who are struggling with the problem shoes, and then you can understand and define the problem, what the problem is. Really is what could be the reason of those problems, why they are struggling with that. So we could, so after that, we come up, after understanding the problem, understanding the needs of the user, the person, what kind of ideas we can have to create new solutions for the problem. So the ideation, and then giving shape to that is called prototyping phase. And then after giving shape to the ideas, you're going to test and then get feedback to see if your idea, and repeat this cycle until you get a satisfying format for your solution. Okay, so let me make a break here. So first thing, global education for global issues. So we have to create new solutions. We have to be creative. The methodology, design thinking, that is centered, user-centered. In the case of education, usually student-centered. If you're developing or designing something for teachers, this will be teacher-centered. We use those technologies and to create programs to connect the classrooms, back to my own interest, to how to connect those classrooms so students could collaborate online and teach and learn from each other. Okay, so how to change people's mind, how to make people make actions. It's basically in these 3 pillars. First, we think, how do we want them to change or to act, to make those actions? So after that, we go back, okay, so to make those actions or to change their way of thinking, what kind of knowledge they need, what they need to be aware of, and also what kind of skills do they need to be able to make those actions. And that's why we use that framework that is used also by UNESCO and many other different international institutions and organizations. So here is one example of what we do. This is the global workshop. Is a program we developed for a Japanese high school, girls' high school. It started in 2015, and we still do this program. In fact, this morning here in Japan, we had the first global workshop session for this year 2021. It's a one-year program, and the topic is basics of sustainability. It's composed by 8 sessions, and in the past we worked with partner schools in Malaysia, in Brazil, in Indonesia, and other countries. Now we focus basically in Japan, and when we have a partner school, we connect with them. The global related goals for this, that's why it's from the name, why it's a global workshop, because we want them to deliver to them global awareness, global skills, and then global actions. We want them to not only know about one problem, not only to get the skills from them, but we want them to use those skills. We want them to use that knowledge and that awareness to make action, to make a difference. And we use different blended methodologies. So we use a little bit of design thinking, we use a little bit of design creative learning, we use a lot of gamification that is very important for these new generations of learners. And probably you are also from this, the millennium generation. I'm very old, but I really like to understand more about how new generations learn. So how the world is connected, how our country is connected. Sometimes when you are a high school student, you're not aware, you just think about yourself. But now we are all connected through the internet. We have a power, even if you are a young person. You remember Greta. Greta she became famous in the whole world because of her activism. Some people didn't like her, some people loved her, but people were listening to her. And she was a very young person. So even young persons nowadays, they have a lot of power. For example, as the global skills, so what kind of skills should they get to try to solve or try to propose solutions for the issues? So ideation, the design thinking methodology would be something like that. Online media literacy, how to find information, how to look for quality information in online. A lot, tons of knowledge are already in the internet. We don't need to transfer all the knowledge one-to-one as the old model of education used to do, because it's already there. And how about we use the technology to support the learning process for students in school? Moving hands and giving shapes to the ideas students have, so that they can exercise their creativity and also promote global action. So what they could do as a high school student, they could, for example, make movies, stop motion movies to spread in their social media, using their own social media, among their own community, or among kids around the world. They could create posters to be used in events. They could even create characters. Here in Japan are very popular. They have characters for everything. This is not only a Japanese thing, this is spreading around the world. So we used to take advantage of, okay, so what would really make students engaged in learning, and try to take advantage of those things. In the past, people would say, no SNS allowed, or no, what is this for? This is too creative. They don't need to know about that. They just need to know the basics of, okay, the basics of knowledge, of course, we need to be delivered. We have to have them as a personal skill full-time. But it's also important for us to be flexible and to know how to use that knowledge and those skills we have in different situations, and try and be able to creative enough to create new solutions. So that was the high school workshop program we did. But as Trisha also mentioned in my introduction, we also do things from K-12. So first steps of diversity, we connected kindergartens around the world, more than 30 sessions, including Japan, France, Spain, Germany, cross-cultural exchange, empathy, but very short programs, because kids cannot concentrate more than 30 minutes in front of the screen. But they were very much engaged on the actions, different small sessions we had inside the programs. We could also develop creativity and communication skills that are those soft skills important for the future. So we had this program called Coma Kids from 2014, and it basically it's stop motion creation activity. We had like 4 or 5 sessions in a year. We connected Japan, Thailand, Brazil, Singapore, and many different countries. This is a program for elementary school students, so they could use their creativity to create stop motion animations. Those animations were based in their own culture. So let's introduce, for example, here in Japan, oh, let's introduce our Japanese holidays or Japanese festivals to other kids around the world. And then kids around the world would introduce make stop animations based on their own festival, on their own culture. And then they would exchange that. So, and the program structure was about learning, creating, sharing, and connecting. So they would learn about their peers, their counterparts, the other countries who would participate in the program that year. They start creating from the storytelling part, the story of their animation. They would create scenarios using very analog materials, so paper, pencils, color pencils, crayon, and they love. Like people say, oh, but these new kids, they are only interested in YouTube. But try to give them clay, try to give them this kind of exercise. You will be impressed. They don't want to know only about digital things. They are super engaged and concentrated in this kind of activity too. And they could share, of course, their movies, the stop animations they did. They would also create sounds for that. It was created as part, this year it was about the Olympics, so they were introducing traditional sports from each country. They would introduce their schools to others. And then not only based on digital communication, but also, as you see in the right page, you can see a letter that they could use. And of course, they are going to exchange with other kids around the world. Not all of them speak English. So what we develop is kind of some sticks with phrases, and then they could just choose the stickers to make one phrase, and there was the translation for other languages. So for example, this you can see it's English in the middle, Japanese in the top of one single stamp, and we have Thai and Portuguese because Brazil, there was a Brazilian school, a school in Thailand, a Japanese school, and schools in English. And in the very end, once they had already known about their peers' culture, they had already exchanged letters and video messages. Then in the last session, we connected them in real time, so they could learn from each other and meet their friends already in that phase. So it was a pretty emotional, let's say, session, because they felt really connected, even if it was a remote session. And we also had design thinking, like empowerment and design thinking, for a program for that. We collaborated with Skylabo, that is an NPO founded by Japanese ladies based in the US. And we designed this as a summer camp for girls and to promote STEM education. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So is the science part of it. And we all know there are very few females in that area, at least here in Japan, even in the US and in other parts. So we wanted to promote, to empower girls to be more interested in those areas, so we could have more female engineers, female scientists. And if we believe that if we had more women in those areas, probably the world could be very different, because we could have people seeing problems from a different perspective and trying to propose solutions from different perspectives. And probably it would be more equal. So that's something that we are very much aware. And then now you understand what I've been doing. I have been using this kind of remote communication, exactly what we are doing now, to connect people around the world so they could learn from each other. But for those 13 years, I've been dedicating my time, my energy, some money to do that research. People usually try to discourage me. like, oh, this won't work. Oh, we don't have internet enough here in our country. Kids cannot use the internet. It's very dangerous, too dangerous. No, they can't do that. Teachers are not prepared. Things, of course, that we kind of know, but we were sure that that would be very important to know how to create programs for that kind of environment. And then we had to talk to 2020, COVID, and everything stopped. We had to be socially distant. Kids could not go to school anymore. Teachers could not teach anymore in the classroom. Kids had to stay at home. Sometimes, some of them, depending on the country, without education, access to education, some of them had to adapt themselves to what was delivered by their school. And the school had to do things or to find solutions in a very short time, those who found. But, you know, what people discourage us, me and people in our lab, that, oh no, these kind of things, it won't work. It changed everything in 3-4 months, sometimes in half a year. That's a very short time. So here in Japan, in 3 months, all the school that didn't have like good access to internet, or students, they didn't have their own computer to do, the schools tried to manage how to deliver tablets for kids, how to improve their Wi-Fi connection. Those who didn't have internet connection at home, the government kind of created some programs to provide. And then in 3 months, what happened? So all schools were kind of connected. Teachers were trying to deliver the curriculum through this kind of remote communication. But there was one problem. Did they know how to do that? That was our main concern, including myself when in my grad school, when I was teaching in the grad school. How to redesign the whole curriculum to be delivered in a 100% online environment. That is what is happening now, what is very needed now. And I had to do that for our courses. I was in part of the task force in my grad school, my test job in the media design course. We also had to design a new media literacy education course for undergrad students in another Japanese university. The global workshop that I introduced it to you before for Japanese high school girls, we had to put everything online, because even if the students became able to go to school in the end of last year, we could not go to school. Our university wouldn't allow us to go to school to deliver the workshop, to facilitate the workshops on site. So we had to do everything online. And of course, all the students, until the situation calmed down. So all students had to attend this workshop from their homes. And we also did designed a course, an international teachers training. We had a program that we would take Japanese teachers, elementary school, high school teachers, to the US and to Brazil for a makers education and creative learning training program. And then because of COVID, we could not travel anymore, and we had to redesign everything from scratch to fit a 100% online. But here, we don't have time. You will be very much tired. So I'm going to focus on how we redesigned the global workshop for high school students. So what were the key points that I want you all to learn from this? You can forget everything about my background, about everything, but here, this will be very important for you to use from now on for yourself as a teacher, and it will also give you some hints for you as a learner. So we have to create new experience for the online environment. It's not just take what we used to do in the classroom and put here in Zoom. It won't work because, for example, what topics fits this kind of environment? There are some topics we want to deliver in education that could fit this kind of environment. There are some topics that not. For example, if it's something that you need more hands-on things, how you cannot just make people collaborate online because they do not use it. The tools they don't allow us to do the same kind of collaboration we used to do when we are on site. The length, is it okay? For example, for grad school, we have 1 hour and a half for one slot of lecture. But in an online environment, would people stay concentrated? Can they be like really focusing on what the lecturer is saying for like 1 hour and a half without no break, or using the same strategies we used to have in a real classroom? No, because the amount of information, what is the amount of information we can deliver through this? Is okay to have the same amount of information of on-site classes, just bring to this kind of environment and try to deliver it. Icebreaker, we have to energize and raising engagement. So the main difference of this kind of communication and the on-site classroom experience, there are so few information being exchanged here. For example, you can see my face, you can see parts of my hands because I have this Brazilian background, so I try to talk with my hands. But if it's a regular Japanese teacher, they would be like this and just speaking very low voice. But for example, if you are in a real classroom, I can see your reaction. So if now I cannot see any of you in my screen, but if I am in the same classroom, I will see like, oh, people are super bored. I need to change my strategy. Oh, that person is very much engaged, but this group is struggling with something, so I can give a better support. But if in this, there's very few information being exchanged. So it's not just putting the same contents from classroom to the remote environment, but we have to rethink everything. And another important point for this is the operation. When you are in the classroom, one teacher by him or herself, they can deliver one lecture. Of course, there are some assistants there, but in this environment, we have cameras, we have computers, we have microphones and earphones. I have a second screen here. We have so many devices and technologies in between us. So how to make that a smooth experience? So operation is very important. So it's very important to define roles. Who will be the lecturer? Probably needs to be focused in the lecture itself. And it's very important to have someone helping with the technical part. Here, I don't have now because I have a kind of studio at my home, but if you work for a school, probably you have someone who's taking care, and very important to have someone to take care of the technological part, or more think about what other roles I need to deliver the best experience for the learner. It will be very important because it's not only about, okay, we need to deliver this, and so let's deliver. We have to think about the user, the learner. Will be the learner able to observe the content I am delivering? Will they be engaged in the way I'm delivering the content? It's very important about this remote environment education. And another thing, what kind of technology to use? Now we are relying only on Zoom. We are in a very traditional seminar, like lecture-like environment. I'm talking to you, I'm delivering some information, some experiences, personal experience for you, and you are listening to that. But sometimes I could expect you to do some hands-on or to working groups. Because of the situation, we have innumerous a big variety of different softwares, applications that will help us to deliver things and will help learners to get the contents being delivered online. So once again, this is how we designed the global workshop, that workshop for high school students, girls high school students here in Japan, for them to know more about the global issues and to propose a proactive solution from their perspective, how they as high school students can contribute to solve those global issues. So the program was based in the abilities and attitudes we want students to have according to the ESD, the Education for Sustainable Development thing. So in fact, we submitted this to a conference of computer-based, computer-supported education. And because there are several ESD approaches, pedagogies, methodologies, because as I explained, this started in 2005. So there are like more than 15 years there that people have been working on that. But because of all the changes, because of the COVID, there were very few, almost inexistent approaches and methodologies validated as ESD methods to be delivered in this kind of situation. We need further designs and practice relating to educational methods for ESD that can be implemented during the pandemic situation. We are suffering the pandemic now. We believe that the pandemic hopefully will calm down soon, but this is not probably the last time. And in some places, in some countries, this situation of, okay, lockdown and release the lockdown and lockdown again and back to the old normal and back to the new normal will be kind of frequent from now on. So we have to be prepared for this kind of things. And the best way to do is to make the best use of ICT, this kind of environment, online environment. And our approach was for this case, okay, let's ask students to create an online video, to co-create an online video during the pandemic. So the research goal was to see how that kind of approach would impact in changing their abilities and attitude. So digital media has been helping us to broaden students' horizons. Media creation is an important skill for today's generation. We are so overloaded. We are in contact with the internet every day. Can you imagine yourself without using the internet for one single day? One single day without using your mobile, without accessing your social media, or without sending emails or messages to your friends or family? I can't. I really can't. Usually when you get information, you have to check if it isn't a fake news or if it's a quality news or if it's a reliable source or it's not a reliable source. But people also forget that we are creating the internet. We are media creators. When we share pictures, when we share posts, when you write blogs, when you write comments online, and when you create some digital video for TikTok or for YouTube, it's a media creation. You are sending out that content through media, and it's something that won't change, and it will increase from now on. But are we prepared? Do they teach that in school? Where do we learn how to be responsible media creators? So this is one of the goals we had here in this program. So, and video creation is also an active learning. Probably you heard about active learning methodologies. So video creation can also be considered an active learning activity. It helps to develop communication skills because you have to think about what kind of message I am going to deliver in a format of a video. And it has advantage of collaboration and teamwork. If you're doing something by yourself, it's okay. But usually when we produce video content, you have a friend or some friends that will help you with camera, will help you thinking about the topic, the content, video editing. So video creation can be expected to have a wide range of educational effects, including ESD. So what we did, a short video creation workshop to promote the SDGs, the United Nations SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. We had 112 students, first year students of a private high school in Tokyo. It's a girl high school, so 120 girls, 12 girls. This year, this morning I told you we had the session for this year's batch, and we had 118, but last year it was 112. And we had around 6 to 10 facilitators. So those facilitators were members of our research team. So master students, PhD students, faculties, and researchers. Where we did that? We did that online and offline. In the first part, it was 100% online because it was until August, and after August, from September on, some students could go to school. Some of them attended from home. So we had this to create this. It was not only a 100% all the time, but in the middle, it changed to a hybrid environment, offline and online environment. So it was from July to December, because this is about our paper, but the program was a little bit longer. And we utilized Zoom. And we also use it, what kind of technology should we choose for them to produce the videos and to share, to communicate with each other, because they were all separated remotely. So we decided to use Google Jamboard and Padlet. Why Google Jamboard? Because it's very easy to access, and they could access without signing in, without a Google account. And Padlet the same. They didn't need to sign in. We share one link, they could be able to access and edit. That time, all students have their own laptop, notebook. It was a Microsoft Surface. So because of that, we decided to use, in fact, we facilitators, we all use Mac. We had to adapt, but it's not about us, it's about the users, as I mentioned before. So if the users are using Microsoft, are using Windows, so we decided to adapt Microsoft Photo for them to do video editing. So this is the workshop flow. So first, we ask students, so is the research phase. So let's understand the what SDGs are, the Sustainable Development Goals are. What kind of sustainable development goals are there? And we ask them to do an illustration, a collaborative illustration, everyone online. In that time, it was 100% online. And then the research phase is the awareness part. So understanding what the problem is. So the planning phase was to make a storyboard for the video. When you are going to shoot a video, it's not just take your camera and just start shooting everything, because it's very important for you to, it's not about teaching, but I don't like that just to teach, because it sounds like one direction. We want them to acquire these video production skills as a professional. So start with make a storyboard so they could organize the ideas that they got from the research phase, and then define, okay, so this is I want to do. This is the skills, already the skills. So get awareness, what they want, we want them to know, then what are the skills we want them to get, the video production. And the action would be really making the video and sending out the video. So making a storyboard, phase 2. Phase 3 was the making. So, okay, based on the storyboard, they could start like shooting the video and editing the video. In that phase, they were in groups. And I don't know how familiar you are with video production, but usually when you are doing, it's not like Google Docs. Everyone can go there and edit. When you are editing one video, only one person can edit the video. And then if you want another person to help you, you have to send your files to the other person, but you cannot touch the file anymore until they send you back the files. And then, so the making phase, so they had to split to define the roles inside the group. So who is going to do what? Oh, you are going to do the editing, you are going to do the shooting, you are going to do the voiceover, you are going to finalize and share the screen. So, and it's related to that collaboration skills that we mentioned in that collaboration and cooperation skills. And reviewing phase. So once we had all videos from all those, we had 20 groups of 5 students, 5, 6 students. And once we had all those 20 videos finished, we put them in Padlet. So all students could share and could see what other groups did. So they could react to peers' work. And using Padlet now is very interesting because when you put one content in there, other people can go and react, like and put comments, just as a social media, but a close and safe social media for that classroom, for that activity. So here you can see, like, they have a research phase when they get awareness of the global, the sustainable development goals, and then they start with the skills phase, like they start planning. Of course, research also has some skills we want them to get, but then, okay, going to the phase 2, make a storyboard, and then start really shooting the video. After shooting, they edit the video, and then after finishing, they share. So this is the process, the workflow we had for the sessions. And here are the abilities they could get. So ability to think critically in research. So ability to plan anticipation of a future scenario, research and planning, multidimensional integrative thinking, communication skills. So you could see all those 7 attitude and abilities listed by the UN, the UNESCO, could be covered in a way through this workflow we created. So understand about the SDGs, then make a drawing, and then present to other students. It's very important for you to set up sharing communication, because if it's not just like when you are in the class, so okay, homework and bye. In this kind of environment, you are usually by yourself, even if you are collaborating remotely. So it's very important to create very clear milestones so they can understand in which phase they are. So it will help them to create confidence. Oh, I'm in the right direction, or I am doing the right thing. So it gives a sense of progress, and it's directly related to kind of activity. So planning phase, so choose a topic, the facilitators create a storyboard, creating the storyboards using Google Jamboard. So during the making phase, before making the real movie, getting used with cameras. So we started with, okay, so paper crane made of paper, origami, we made a competition. So they had to do the smallest paper crane they could, and there was competition. The smallest one would be the winner. But the smallest, what means smallest in this kind of environment? If we are in the same classroom, on-site real classroom, we can see, oh, the very tiny 2 millimeters paper crane is the winner. But in this kind of environment, we can really evaluate what is the biggest or what is the shortest. But then we want them to be creative, and they were super creative, much more creative than we were expecting. So as you can see, depending on the angle where you take the picture or the layout you create, the composition you create for the photo, the paper crane will look very small, even if the real paper crane was not that small. But this sense of perspective, of distance, would make it look very small. And one thing that I want to add here is that we want them to get skills, we want them to change attitude, we want them to be aware of something. So in this case, in our case in particular, it's not about what is right or what is wrong. It's not about taking only the right decision, making the right decision or a wrong decision. We want them to have experiences and to be creative, to exercise their creativity. And that will lead to all those soft skills, those abilities we want them to get, that will help them to be creative and innovative when they are trying to solve a new problem that has no precedence in the past. So when we're reviewing posting Padlet, as you can see here in the middle, they had the videos, and then they could have the like buttons, and you could add comments here or questions, and they could like communicate with each other. So, and then since this was academic research for a conference, we asked how to validate. We always have, of course, it's not only because it's for a conference, but it's for us. Are students really engaged? Are they reacting? Are they learning the way we expect them to learn? Or are they learning something different, more than we were expecting? That's why we evaluate all our activities frequently. So we use qualitative data from questionnaires. So we have questionnaire surveys every end of activity, every session. And we also have observation as one of methods of evaluation. So this observation is not only from our facilitator point of view, but also teachers at the school. They can see, they are in contact with students every day. We from our team, we are in contact with the students only once in every 2 months. So we have one perspective. Teachers can see probably better how students are changing before, after attending the sessions, and we interview them periodically so we can get feedback, and then that kind of information will help us to improve the upcoming activities. We have planning phase. I can share this document. This is an academic paper, so it's available online. You can see the results later on when you have more time. But then here we summarize all the feedback we got from students, and that helped us to improve future sessions. So, for example, in the making phase, students had the opportunity to communicate, collaborate, and while being respectful to each other. So when you have to collaborate with someone, you have to communicate with them, and also that communication should be respectful. So you have a lot of skills, abilities that students have to exercise. But for example, of course, it's not only about telling, oh, it was super success, everything went smooth. It doesn't go smooth all the time. So here, for example, teamwork division did not go smoothly in some cases. So for example, abilities and it's not fully acquired was proactive participation. So some students were very active, but some students were very submissive. They were not really contributing to the team's work. So based on that kind of information, okay, so what would be the possible improvements for future sessions? So preset the roles from, so we, from facilitators, we define in advance. So, or we ask them, oh, one have to be the director, one have to be the cameraman, one would be the actor, the editor. So sometimes we ourselves need to be flexible with this kind of approach. So through the video creation workshop, so in each phase of video creation, students were able to acquire critical thinking and collaboration abilities according to our analysis. And improvements are needed to promote active participation in smooth collaborative work and planning. Then, once again, key points. What do you need to know? When creating new experience online, it's not just putting the experience you have on site in the real classrooms. Like, what is the topic I want to deliver fit the environment, this new environment, this online environment? How long should I take? Can I have the same length in an online environment? How much information should I deliver per session? Can I deliver the same amount of information in this online session? You have to rethink about that. And what are the strategies for me to deliver something that will keep students engaged and energized to learn as much as we expect, because we all know that learning in this kind of environment is not easy. If it's not easy for us, imagine for the kids. You have to think from the learner's perspective. Are my strategies enough or good enough for the learners and the operation? And just to finish my presentation, this is one very simple message I have to you. Be creative. Sometimes, especially you that are in education, I don't have a formal background in education. I grew up, my professional background is more in the design field. And I brought, even now, I don't consider myself as a traditional educator. I always define myself as a learning designer. I design the way of learning. So, and I want to contribute to teachers and with people in the education field to deliver content, deliver education in the best way. And one of the things we struggle here in Japan is that they have a very strict curriculum, very strict methodologies to deliver education as in schools. If it's private institution, private school, they have more freedom to create, to be creative in their methodologies, in their approaches, in their strategies to teach. But if it's a public school, they have more limitation for that. But we cannot be limited because of those limitations. We have to be creative. We have to think from different perspectives, from the learner perspective, to design the way we teach. So be creative. Thank you very much.
いやー、こんにちは、先生。
こんにちは。
私の名前は夏美です。
Oh,
Natsumi. Like, I have a question, and like,
yeah.
if you don't mind, I would like to pop up a question. Can you give me a brief explanation about a creative online platform? Like how to make it more creative? Like the online platform is really like, we can't interact very physically, so like we have a little space to be more creative. So I would like to give you like asking for a brief explanation how to be more creative as teachers to interact like to engage in a platform, online platform.
Okay, so how to be creative? Let me see if I can answer your question. I believe there are the tools will help us to enhance our creativity and to deliver our creativity. The creativity is in the way we think, in the strategies we create. So what kind of strategies I'm going to deliver? So, in the classroom, I used to do like this, but then in the remote environment, maybe if I try this way, I think it would be different. And I think it would be more efficient than that. And there are a lot of things that we can do here in this environment that we cannot do in the classroom. So that's the thing. So try to think about, okay, so what can I do here in this environment that I could not do? In fact, I wanted to do that when I was teaching in the classroom, but I didn't have the technology. Wow, now I'm in 100% connected digital environment. So what can I do now? For example, one of the things I here in Japan, in Tokyo, I'm talking to you directly. So you are in Sri Lanka, something that we could not do if we were in the same classroom. We overcome distance barriers. We overcome time difference barriers because I'm 3 hours and a half ahead of Sri Lanka. And so I think the key of creativity is the way you design your strategy to put in the online environment. And creativity, as I mentioned before, it's not about artistic expression. It's about trying to put your ideas, to have new ideas, and to give format to that, to put that in practice, try your ideas. And then you can, if you don't try your ideas, you won't be able to see if it really works or if it doesn't work. So it's very important to have this spirit, creative spirit of to be creative in this kind of platforms, online platforms. And for example, one of the things that I really like of we have a lot of things already available. Talking about the platforms already, Google Drive, the Google Scholar, no, not Google Scholar, the, oh my God, I forgot the name. But anyway, the Google Classroom, that's right. The Google Classroom, we have Moodle, we have many other things. We have the Padlet that I showed you. We have, for example, Miro for online collaboration, real-time collaboration. They're always there, but I believe that those platforms, they are there to help, to give format, to help us to show our creativity, to share our creativity. Creativity is here. So the platform, so, and then it's very important, one point I told you, what is the best technology for me to use when I'm going to deliver one kind of content? So, probably Google Classroom will work better. For example, for the teachers training I did, we use everything using Google Classroom. But for example, for the girls, we couldn't use all the tools of Google Classroom because they didn't have a Google account. And we cannot just say 100 girls, hey, please create your Google account, because they couldn't do. The school had to do that, and that would be a burden for all sides. So what would be the easiest tool, but still something that works for the environment, so they can work on that. And that's I think it's the creative, it's like having the spirit of trying your ideas, trying out your ideas. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you very much. It was very valuable.
Thank you very much, Natsumi.
I'm Dhutika. So first of all, I would like to thank you. Thank you so much for the informative lecture that you gave us.
Thank you.
My question is, I would like to know how should we get parents involved in this online learning environment as educators? And also, I would like to know your observation on this when teaching or when teacher training, because this is where my research interest actually is.
Okay, good. Thank you very much for your question, Dhutika. First, regarding the parents' involvement in the learning process. In fact, we were not expecting parents' collaboration when we designed, for example, the global workshop for high school students. However, for our surprise, parents really participated. They contributed to the session, helping the kids to get connected to the session, because at first it was 100% online. So kids could not go to school because of the pandemic. So they were at home and they had to access the same Zoom session with us. And then some of the kids, of course, they had some troubles to access the Zoom session. It was in the very beginning. We started in the very beginning of the pandemic, so they were not really used with the environment. So parents played a very important role in that phase, helping students to get connected. So it was a technical support. This one kind of involvement. Then another involvement that was really interesting, since they are at home, they can be isolated in their own bedroom or their office where they are attending the session, or they can be in the dining room or the living room with their family while they are joining the session. And then, for example, we had the paper crane, the origami competition to make the smallest one. And most of the students, they have everyone in their family like doing the origami with them. So they had not only one single origami, but some of the students, they have several origamis. And oh, what happened? Oh no, my parents helped my siblings helping me to do the origami. So that this is one thing that happened. And since they are kind of close, if of course it depends on the family, the family dynamics inside the house. If they are open, students are very much open to come. Just adding a little bit, when we used to do the global workshop at the school, we sometimes we had the school was open for parents just to visit to see how the school works. We had this kind of days here. It's not every day, but we have this kind of days in Japanese schools. And sometimes it was a coincidence to have the workshop and the parents at the school at the same day. And we had a lot of gamification, some quiz games during the contents during the sessions. And it's part of the knowledge, the awareness part. And then we had some parents attending. Okay, Lo, we are going to, please parents, you can join the game with the kids. And it was super nice and it was super funny to see like parents super excited to write to answer the questions, the quizzes. And they were like, whoa, I could win. And then, oh, you can, students, you cannot let your mothers and fathers win the competition. You have to make better. And then students got more engaged in the quizzes. So it was very interesting to see how they contribute to each other's engagement. So in that sense, it was not something that we designed it to, but it happened naturally. So that it was a positive thing. But as you probably you asked that question because you are very much interested in it. I also believe that it's very important for you to design ways for parents, for family members to help the learning process, especially during the pandemic, because the kids, when they are alone, they cannot socialize, they cannot see their friend, oh, what you're doing there, and they cannot collaborate among peers, but they have the family. So it's very important for us to design and to give cues, give hints to the families to help the kids in that process. They are super isolated, and that's not good for their mental health. That is another thing, but it's very important. If they are not doing good with their mental health, they definitely won't do good for the learning thing. So it's very important for the family to support the kids that are learning from home. So not only for the learning process, but also for the mental health part. And,
thank you so much, Dr. Sadao.
Okay, thank you. By the way, there is one question here in the chat. I think it's by Sakura. I think it's pretty back. So yeah. What is ESD? Sakura, ESD stands for Education for Sustainable Development.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. And I have another problem.
Yes.
During an online session, what kind of classroom activities, games, can we do with children, and how to be more interactive with each other? What kind of
So it's very important for you to understand, okay, the target. For example, if it's kindergarten kids, you have one kind of activity that will make them more engaged. If it's elementary school students, so depending on the age, one activity would fit better than others. Through my experience, what I showed you, elementary school kids, grade 4, 5, and 6, they are very good in doing hands-on. And they already deal very well with taking pictures, using tablet, using smartphones, for example, using small cameras. But we tried to do that with grade 1, 2, and 3 in the past, and it didn't work because they cannot. I mean, they can take pictures, they can see YouTube, but if you want that, they cannot like edit videos. They don't have strength enough to hold cameras and tablets firmly, and it's very hard for them to get some things. So depending on the age, you can have different strategies. And quizzes usually work for all of the ages. Then you can set up different quizzes with different difficult levels. You have some online tools, for example, Kahoot. Kahoot is one quiz app that we use very often for elementary, for junior high and high school students, and because you can access from your mobile. So you're watching the lecture here with your laptop or your computer, and then you can access the app using your mobile, and then you can answer the quizzes that you were watching in your screen through your mobile phone. So and quizzes are also very good to use in educational settings because you are delivering things that you want them to learn, and in the same time it's a kind of gamification, it's a competition. So they want to answer the right answer. They want to get more points, and they want to win. If you make this a competition-like thing. So this is another thing. Just to add a little bit more, so for example, hands-on, so prototyping things is something that they are very pretty engaged. So as I mentioned, for example, the elementary schools, the Coma Kids, they are doing the stop motion animation. They were super good at thinking about their own culture and making the characters for the movies. For the high school students, we have them, okay, so create a solution to solve, let's say, ocean pollution. And then they think about things, oh, we want a machine a robot that will have a super large arm that will clean the ocean. And they could prototype using very simple material like wood stick, paper, cartoon, etc., etc. So it's not, they are connected, but they don't need to be using the technology. This ICT, the Zoom can be only a communication, but for their hands, you can use many other kinds of, you don't need to use their mobile, make them use their mobiles, but you can having them doing handcraft, for example, to make them engaged. And depending, for example, discussions doesn't work very well here in Japan because students are pretty shy. They are not educated to speak out their own opinions. That is a characteristic of Japanese education. But for example, if that's standard here there in Japan, and I worked with students in other cultures, for example, Korea, Malaysia, Southeast Asia, Brazil, and in the US, of course, they are super engaged in discussions. So even like students in junior high or in grade 5 or 6 of elementary school, they were super proactive for discussions. They were active speakers. They had their own opinions, and they were willing to share that with the others. So it all depends the age, the characteristics of your students, of the target. That's why it's very important for you to understand who I am talking to, who are attending my class, and then you design for them.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Okay.
How can we, how can we try to find out and solve the problems and those they have when we teach from online? One thing that I believe it's very important, as I mentioned, when you are in a classroom, you can see the students' reaction, you can see their face expression, even if they don't say anything. You can see their body movement, and from those kind of information, different information, you can guess, oh, I think that student is struggling with something, I think that other student needs some help, but in this environment not. So then what we usually do, first, we try to ask them to keep cameras on. And this is not only for higher grades, higher age, for example, university students. This is for elementary school students, high school students, undergrad students, master students. So we can see a little of their facial expressions and their reactions depending on what we say on the phase of our lecture and where we are in our lecture. So we can adjust, so we can find. Another thing that is very important is for you to create this habit of checking with students. So call them, some of them, time to time. So, hey Natsumi, are you okay? Do you have any questions? Hey Rachel, are you fine? Do you have technical problems? Hey Suhani, do you need some support from me? Like checking time by time with students is probably the way we have to find out if they have problems. Sometimes they are not comfortable enough to raise hands and speak out. So it's very good. It's very important for us to try to reach them. If we feel that what we see here, or just if you, it's just for checking. Sometimes they have no problems, and then you can. And if they are at home, whenever possible, I think it's interesting to talk with parents. I don't know how close is the relation of parents, families, and schools there in Sri Lanka. Here in Japan is pretty close. The communication among between schools and parents. How about in Sri Lanka? Are schools very close? Do schools keep close communication with families? Kind of, not exactly.
Yeah, kind of. Like we
kind
have.
of. Okay.
Yeah.
So so there's no one single answer for that question. So I think you have to create new strategies. So checking during the class with students randomly and periodically if they are okay, if they have any questions, if they are following or not. And you don't have to ask, oh, are you following the lecture? Because sometimes if they are not following, they won't be comfortable to raise hands. Oh, I'm not understanding anything. But you can try to ask questions and catch some hints that will tell you, oh, this student needs help. So, and then if you are in the situation, oh, now I understand that this student has some problems, then you have to try to find out, so, okay, what is the problem? Are they listening to me? So you give them questions, ask them to speak, depending on time, depending on the timing of the lecture, just to catch up, to see if everything is okay.
Good evening. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the lecture, Dr. Marcos. And I actually like to know, when we're teaching the elementary kids, actually it's impossible to keep them at one place and they are not giving us the attention. So I want to know, is there any particular thing we can do for get the attention for us?
Yeah, it's that's another very good question. I had this experience of teaching online last year. Start teaching 100% online that year, and when I had like 2 meetings in one day, online meeting one day that time. In the end of the day, I was super exhausted. But I thought, okay, if I'm exhausted having just 2 lectures, teaching 2 lectures, imagine the students who have to attend like 6 lectures a day. It's not for humans. It's not really good. But this is what we have now, and how we have to think how we can make that experience a better experience. I would have you. I don't teach, for example, as a regular elementary school teacher, like the whole day for one class. But what I heard from some teachers here in Japan and some colleagues of mine, and what I think that we could do for that is first trying to not to deliver the same amount of things that we usually do in classrooms, because it would be over, you can calculate that times 5 or 6 slots a day. It would be too much information in this kind of remote digital communication. And the only information you can get is the voice and some facial expression. It's very few information that students are going to get. And that makes our brain work so much to try to understand what is happening in the other side of the camera, that you get exhausted very easily. And that's what happens to kids. So I believe that having breaks, a little bit longer breaks, would help. I mean, first, redesign the amount of information you deliver online, and try to make it as interactive as much as you can. For example, asking questions, change the format for example, a quiz game, or changing the information. Okay, so try to ask them to move their bodies, because if they keep in front of the screen the whole day, that will make them more tired. Because when they are at school, even if they are in the classroom, during the breaks, they go out to the ground and they play with their friends, they release energy. But if all that energy is accumulated when they are at home, they will lose concentration. So we have to find ways to help them to release that energy, but sometimes having maybe a little bit longer breaks, but probably changing the way you deliver, not just transferring knowledge, but trying to learn with them. I think it's maybe the best strategy you may have. Redesign the amount of information, and rethink about the way to deliver the knowledge. It's not only knowledge transfer, because the knowledge is already in the internet. If you can, if it's not grade 1, 2, and 3 would be a little bit more difficult, but for higher grades, students will be able to do some simple internet search, or take pictures around them in the garden or in their community, and trying to change the strategy for a more gamification, a game-like thing, add a little bit more of gamification and hands-on during the lecture, I think would help them to be more concentrated. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Siddharth. And if I can add a little bit, I particularly appreciate your initiatives to engage students on a cross-cultural learning basis, because that exposes them to a world outside their country. So they're not just stuck within the norms of the country, but they also get exposed to what's outside. So that is a very good initiative. And I also love the fact that in your core, you also very much want to empower girls. And that is very true because women, they have a different perspective. Looking at many things in life, they have a very different way of looking at things. And I believe if they enter, if they sustain and establish themselves, the future of businesses can really change. And lastly, teaching students to be creative. You see, you give them the opportunity to discover themselves rather than just throwing at them a textbook instruction to do it this way, one size fits all solution, do it this way. But if you give them a chance to be creative, it allows the student to discover themselves, gives them a chance to be unique, it even opens up new possibilities. So thank you very much, Siddharth.
So taking after Dr. Sadao is making me a little bit nervous due to his expertise and his knowledge and his experience. But I hope what I share today is useful for you. It's a little bit more theory heavy. This is an area that I pride myself in as a learner. So as you may have met me during academic writing classes or research methodology classes, I've met most of the undergraduate students that we have, and I've met most of the master's students that we have. So you have already most probably heard that I'm half Japanese. So I was born and raised in Sri Lanka. So my mother tongue is Sinhalese. I moved to Japan when I was 14, right? After that, I had a marketing background. So I'm qualified from CIM. I have a bachelor's in leadership and management and my master's in education from the University of Bath, right? So after high school in Japan, I self-studied for all of my qualifications. So I used to work full-time. So that was like a 9:30 to 6:30 job. It was a 54-minute train ride, and I used to buy my ticket and I used to come and sit for my CIM exams. Sometimes I didn't have the luxury to study for all the modules for one diploma. So I had to break it down and do it multiple times a year. I used to study on the train. I used to listen to YouTube videos. And I think even from that time when I was around 20 years old, I developed what we call this academic self-regulation, right? So the half Japanese side of me and about 15, 16 years in Japan contributes to it, because we learn punctuality at its best. There is no Japanese person you would meet in your life who is late by even 1 second. I think Sadao-san would agree with us.
100%, but I'm Brazilian, so I'm late.
Okay. Sri Lankans are very late. So this is amazing. When we joined today, we had 80 plus participants. So they're kind of breaking the cultural image that we have of Sri Lanka, because Sri Lankans are extremely late. If you tell them 8 o'clock, they will start getting ready at 8 o'clock, right? So self-regulated learning, and I would like to talk to you ladies and gentlemen. I see a few gentlemen. Just a few. So majority ladies, I would like to talk to you about how you can use this academic self-regulation while you're studying during a pandemic. So we are not in a normal situation here where our learning environment, we love our interactions with our lecturers, we love our classmates. The joy of studying for higher education is the whole social context. But when we are put into this online environment, we don't even get to see them. We don't get to do icebreakers. We don't get to become friends with our teachers or our lecturers. So we miss out a lot. Just the same way my students miss it, I miss it a lot as well. I miss my classroom where we crack jokes and we, go for ice cream and all those things. I miss it a lot. But higher education is one of the best things I've done for myself. So I didn't go from a traditional high school, university, 4 years, masters. I didn't do that. I worked full time, and then you have your family commitments, you have your social commitments, and I qualified myself so that I can do a master's in a good university. So this year I'm hoping I would enroll in a PhD. Have to find a good supervisor for that, right? So after PhD, I think I am sufficiently comfortable to do postdoctorate research as well, right? All of this confidence comes by being able to self-regulate how you learn, right? So one of the most important things in higher education, right? So it's no more enough just to think that you're going to be a good teacher. It's no more good enough to think that, oh, I'm good at lecturing, I'm good at theory knowledge. No, even in Sri Lanka, they require you to be qualified from good institutions, qualified from good universities, right? So while this pandemic hopefully gets better, one of the best things we can do for ourselves is to finish the qualifications that we have started, right? And learning is difficult. Learning is difficult in a normal classroom setting. Learning is difficult during a pandemic, especially with all the distractions that you have, your family members, if you have children, if you're married, if you're doing a full-time job and you're adjusting to online teaching as well, right? So one of the best things that I've come across is self-regulation. And today I'm going to talk to you about this topic, right? So we'll look at what academic self-regulation is. I would like you all to reflect, and I would like you all to think about if you are self-regulated or not. Most of the time, majority of the students I have met have never heard about these strategies, right? So once you reflect and the content that I teach you or the content that I introduce you to, always in your mind think, am I doing this? Is this new to me? Or this is brand new to me, I've never heard it. But at the same time, you have to be able to think, am I ready to change, right? So apart from being an academic lecturer, apart from being a tutor or an academic coach, one of the most important things I believe is we all have within us to change. The external environment for me does not matter. I think when I did my bachelor's dissertation, there was a tsunami in Japan and radiation, Fukushima. That environment happened while I was writing my last few chapters. But for me, the external doesn't matter. For me, it's only the internal, my feelings within me. And self-regulation through an academic setting builds a lot of good things for you. But we have to understand what it is, and we have to be able to create it into a habit. So how do we create it into a habit? We practice little bit every day. But every day you have to practice. And eventually, after a few months, after a few years, you look back and you're systematically regulating your academic environment. You start feeling good about yourself because you're accomplishing things when you get things done. And your emotions are also very much in control. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So we'll go through 6 components of academic self-regulation, right? And then we'll look into see how important academic self-regulation is in a higher educational setting and how it impacts your success, right? So there are hundreds of research articles that suggest the regulated, self-regulated students in college, in higher education, succeed much better than the ones who lack this academic self-regulation. Okay, so there is scientific experiments done, there is a lot of quantitative research studies done, right? And then we will look at how you can analyze your strengths and weaknesses to become a self-regulated learner, right? So in higher education, you have to reflect a lot. You have to think about yourself a lot. Think about what you do every day. Think about your thinking process. Think about your note-taking process. Think about how much we drift away on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. All of those things, you have to be very conscious. I do those too. I watch a lot of doggy videos and makeup videos. If you noticed, I like makeup and hair. So sometimes when you watch those, hours can pass and the whole day is gone, right? Those are not good habits we have to, do while we are studying, right? So while this pandemic can cause many challenges and while we can feel demotivated, I believe that so see, if you put a red lens in front of your face, the whole world looks red to you. If you put a blue lens in front of your face, the whole world looks blue. So we have to change the way we look at this, right? I know it's stressful. I know it's challenging, but if you can just for a moment change your mindset and try to think in a way that we can take this as an opportunity, things start getting a little bit better. So we have to focus on the positives. And as always, focus on yourself, right? So self-regulation in very layman terms for me is self-love, academic self-love. So we hear a lot about self-love, taking care of our skin, eating healthy, doing exercises, drinking 3 liters of water. I can't achieve that. I can drink 3 liters of coffee. But academic self-regulation is where you're doing self-love for yourself, ensuring that you have a qualified, professionally ready diploma or a degree or a master's to enter the industry and to have more earning power, to be able to, get a job, from that job to go into a more senior teaching position, then to go into maybe management position, right? So most of the girls we have today are quite young, but you have to look at the long-term picture. You can't look at, oh, this exam is difficult, oh, this theory is difficult. You can't look at it short term. You have to look at your end goal, right? Some of you may have dreams of having a PhD. Some of you may have dreams of having a master's, right? So think of yourself. So if you're 20 years old right now, by the time you're 25, you're looking at your bachelor's. Before you're 30, you're looking at your master's. By the time you're 35, you're looking at your PhD. And all of you all are capable of getting there. So always think of 5, 10, 15 years. And when that difficulty kicks in, remind yourself of the ultimate goal where you want to be. Don't focus on that difficult theory, that difficult lesson, that assignment, 3,000 words. Oh my God, how am I going to write 3,000 words, right? But during that challenge, always at the background, this is where I'm going to be. This is what I want to get, right? So if you're thinking of scholarships as well, you may have to study a little bit more harder, right? So once we analyze your strengths and weaknesses and we understand, are we regulated? Are we regulating our academic environment? Are we practicing these tips that are given, right? You have to be able to really reflect and think, am I ready to change, right? So if you are able to bring in these strategies that I'm going to introduce to you, I promise you, your whole learning journey becomes a little bit more organized, becomes a little bit more systematic. It produces better results, right? And when we study, we want better results. If we didn't study to get a qualification that shows higher marks in our certifications, there is a wealth of knowledge online, just the way Dr. Sadao said. There are so many courses for free if you don't want that transcript. You can self-study any discipline these days, right? But we focus on marks as well because we would like those marks to reflect on our transcripts. When you go into an interview, when you are facing an employer who is thinking about recruiting you, they definitely look at those marks as well, right? So always remember, this is not going to last forever. This is a very short period of your life. A diploma may be 1 year, a degree may be 2-3 years. Sri Lanka, we do it very quickly. A master's maximum 18 months, 24 months. If you take time, it can go up to 5 years, but then again, it's not going to last for the rest of your lifetime, right? But these skills that we learn when we are able to self-regulate ourselves, when we go into the professional, when we practice, we take them with us as well, right? So some of the questions that I'm going to pose to you, you have to really think. So read the slides. I like active students. So my students have to listen to me, read the slides, and think at the same time. I know I'm a very demanding lecturer. So Trishal and them know that. I get their brain working, and they need coffee when they have to do classes with me, right? So one of the first things that we should realize is that why do some students fail? And why are some students successful? Okay, partially it can be with the intelligence, partially it can be with the IQ, right? But majority of the time, some students believe that the academic success or the academic outcome is because they have some faulty beliefs. They have some misconceptions about their own ability, their own learning, and their own motivation, right? And they are unaware that these beliefs will kind of influence the way they do their learning. So the learning behavior gets influenced from the beliefs that they have about their own ability, their own learning, and their own motivation. right? They also find it difficult. So the ones who don't do well academically, they find it difficult to sustain this motivation or to sustain these learning strategies, right? So this motivation or these learning strategies don't come naturally for the average person. Maybe for Einstein, it came naturally. Maybe for a very highly intelligent person, it comes naturally. Maybe in Sri Lanka, the ones who go to medical college, it comes naturally. But for the average you and me, it does not come naturally. So like someone goes to a gym and works on that, what is this muscle, Trisha?
Bicep.
Bicep. So that's how much I don't know about muscles. So they would work on that bicep every day, right? How long will it take for the muscle to build?
It takes years if you're not taking anything synthetically.
Okay, it takes years to build a muscle, right? Okay, so self-regulated learning will not take years, right? So some other characteristics of these unsuccessful learners is that they are not really ready to change the way they learn or the way they study, okay? So if we are going to get through this pandemic and you're going to take this as an opportunity, the fact that we have the technology, the fact that you have lecturers ready to teach online who are very much capable of delivering online, right? The fact that all journal articles are online, the textbooks are online, right? So if we did not have this technologically advanced environment, you can't finish your qualification. Because if you had to physically go to Colombo University Library, or you have to go to British Council Library, and we are under lockdown, by the way, Sadao-san, right now. Since yesterday, 11 o'clock, they're not calling it a lockdown. They are saying that travel restrictions, but we can't go out of the house. And then every other day, based on our national identity card number, odd numbers or even numbers, we can go out. So the supermarkets were full. There was like a 3-hour queue. Yes, it just got bad with the UK variant entering, and they're suspecting the Indian variant also to enter, right? So one thing that you have to see is during this pandemic that you change the way how you look at learning, and you change the way how you, so I think it's actually good because we save travel time. Now, if I had to go to work every day, we have to get ready. That takes about 1 hour. Then traveling takes about another 1 hour. Then you can't just work and come. You have other social obligations of saying hi to this person, sitting down and having coffee with this person. There's a lot of social commitments as well. But during this pandemic, I found that I don't have any of those. I'm saving about 3-4 hours a day compared to me physically traveling to work. So that's for the learner as well. So if you actually had to go to campus, if you actually had to go and sit in lectures, you would be spending much more time traveling, getting ready, and then hanging out with friends, right? So for me, this kind of course, I miss the social interaction, not that I don't miss it, but it's much more efficient, right? The last point is that these students, they lack awareness and the control of their thinking. Now, how many of y'all think about your thinking? Hands up. Think about your thinking. Hands up. I want to see participants. So what does this mean? Let's say you shared an opinion with a colleague, or you're having an opinion about something in your head. Do you think about the thinking? Why did I think like that? What made me say that? Why did I come to that conclusion? How did I arrive at that argument? Why did I share that comment? Do you think about your thinking? Okay, so we have quite a bit raising their hands, right? Which is good, right? So not actually quite a bit. Are the students awake? I hope I'm not putting you to sleep right now, right? So we only have about a dozen students raising their hands. They are awake, they are awake, they are raising their hands, right? So another skill is that when students aren't successful, they are not really thinking about their thinking, right? So this is a question for you. So imagine I'm your lecturer, and without giving you any prior notification, I give you an article and I tell you to prepare for a test within 15 minutes. The article is 5 pages long and it's a topic on social science. How would you tackle this? I give you an article, it's 5 pages long. It's on social science. And I'm telling you that in 15 minutes, you have to get ready for the test. How would you tackle this?
Like each page you can spend 5 minutes to read and 5 pages. So within 15 minutes you read like one page. If you take 5 minutes to read and get a short idea each page, and like for the question that you give for us, like you can like shortly answer.
Okay.
Like the
Okay.
thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you quickly go through all 5 pages. Anyone else?
My way is I am point out the keywords for all 5 pages. That's my way.
She will highlight all the keywords. Very good. Anyone else?
Yeah, we can go through the headings and subheadings.
Okay. So while you go through the headings and subheadings.
While that we have to go search for keywords also.
Keywords also. Good. Yes. Anyone else?
I would skim read every paragraph, the first sentence and the last sentence, to grasp the idea of what the paragraph is talking about. And if I find it very important, I'll look at the sentence, start highlighting what's important.
Good, good, very good. So shall we look at the answers? All those are very good input, very good input. But wouldn't you first ask the teacher, what's the test gonna be? Is it gonna be essay? Is it gonna be short answers? Is it gonna be MCQs? Wouldn't you ask and see what the test would be about? Should I write an essay about this? Am I supposed to multiple choice selection, right? You can also ask the teacher how you should approach the reading, given that she is only giving you 15 minutes. So you can go, miss, should I read the whole thing, or should I read only the first few paragraphs, or should I just read the introduction and conclusion paragraphs, right? And another thing that you might do is you might look at the topic and the title and the author. Have you read something before this? Can you recall the topic from maybe a background reading you did, or maybe another assignment that you studied for, or maybe for another test that you studied for before, right? And do you recall the author? So if we give you Bandura, or if we give you Vygotsky, or we give you Piaget, if you see the title there, you already know their theories, right? So that's another thing that you would do, right? And then, like you all said, you would look at the subheadings, you will look at the topic sentences. So that would be the first sentence in the paragraph. You would look at the abstract, the introduction, maybe look at keywords, highlight words, and look at the figures and tables, right? So these are all things that students would do, right, if they are self-regulating their academic environment. Right, 5-page article, 15 minutes, it's impossible. So we have to have tactics and strategies that we are trained to be able to face a situation like this, right? So the next slide, right? You were given another article to read by your teacher. After 3 hours of reading, you could only finish half of the article. And even worse, it seemed you did not quite understand the article. What would you do? So you read an article, 3 hours of reading, you've only done 50% of it, and you're not very capable of understanding what's going on, right? What would you do? What would you do with an article like that? After spending 3 hours, after finishing half of the article, but you really don't understand the article. What would you do as a learner? Any inputs?
Since I'm already overwhelmed by the content and, my motivation levels have dropped because of how big the article is, I would first take a 15 minutes break.
Okay.
So just to refresh myself.
Okay, so he would take a break because it's overwhelming and can't understand. Good. Anyone else? What would you do with the article?
I will read the topic of the article, which means like topic is the main thing. Then the paragraphs must be the meaning of this topic. So I will understand topic and try to go through little key points. And however, I will come for a conclusion that, okay, I'm ready with this article.
Okay, so but you have already finished reading half of the article. You have spent 3 hours of reading. I want to know, what would you do after 3 hours of reading? Shall I ask Sadao-san what he would do? Is that okay? Is Sadao-san still around? I don't see him here.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah,
So yeah, definitely I would take a break, as Trishal mentioned.
Good to know.
First, and then I don't know. I think I would change my strategy and try to go again for the main topics.
Okay, so one of the things that a strategic learner or someone who practices self-regulated learning would do is they might ask someone for help. So the theory is difficult to understand, the concepts are difficult to understand, so you ask for help. The second thing they may do is they may actually evaluate and see how important is this article for their learning goals, right? So they may actually evaluate and see if it's related to the goals that they have set. If it's not related, they will just use it only for reference. They won't use it as a core material for the goals that they have. So the goals are usually answering the assignment questions or being able to prepare for a test or a presentation that they would go through it, right? And they will discard it. So you don't have to read an article that you're finding difficult to read after spending hours and not going through the whole 100%. You can't go through it. You don't have to, right? And another thing a strategic learner would do is they would check and see if they are missing any prior knowledge. So sometimes we can't understand a certain concept unless we have built from the base, right? So we might have to go through the background of that material, or we might have to go through, I'm really sorry, I am naturally a very, very reactive person to the humidity. And Sri Lanka has very, very high humidity. I shifted houses recently and I still haven't gotten AC. So please, I know this is a recorded session, so please forgive this unprofessionalism. But this is also very Japanese, by the way. In Japan, we might actually keep a towel around our neck if we are, we might keep a cold towel around our neck, right? So the third thing these learners would do is that they would actually check and see if they need to do any additional reading, that they have to first obtain the basic knowledge to be able to read this article. So you have to build the foundation, right? So these are all things that you're consciously reflecting upon. You're strategic towards your one and your attitude. Now I have 15 minutes to prepare. You're not going to panic. You're not going to think, oh my gosh, I can't read the whole thing, right? So you can skim read. You can ask the teacher what are the questions. You're prepared. You know how to prepare within even 15 minutes. And then you come across an article that you can't really understand. You don't go through it again and again, wasting hours and hours. You evaluate. You ask yourself, can I get help? Can someone teach me what's in this article? Is it really necessary for my assignment? Can I just use it for reference only? Can I discard it? You have options. And the third thing is, do I have the foundation to understand this level? If I don't have the foundation, I have to go back to a chapter of a book, maybe understand the theory a little bit, maybe watch a YouTube video, maybe brainstorm with my lecturer, maybe brainstorm with my friends, build that prior knowledge so that I can use it if it's relevant. If you deem it's not relevant, you discard it. So you don't have to, like, this is what I use the word suffering. You don't have to suffer and read that article over and over again, right? So the students smile with me because they know sometimes, reading articles is quite difficult, especially peer-reviewed journal articles. So if we look at this definition given by Zimmerman in 2000, so self-regulation refers to self-generated thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that are oriented towards goal achievement, goal attainment, right? So a self-regulated learner will always have their goals. So goals can include finishing a certain reading material during a certain period of time. Goals can be summarizing what you have learned. Goals can be writing a part of your assignment. Goals can be finishing a chapter or a section. There could be different learning goals. These goals are not about getting a first-class degree or not getting about a distinction. Maybe that's the ultimate goal. You want to get an A, but you're going to work your way there through setting small goals, right? These goals are achieved by your thoughts, your feelings, and regulating the behavior, right? So I would like my students to actually write these keywords. your self-generated thoughts, your self-generated feelings, and your self-generated behaviors. And we are going to talk about this a little bit more. And the fact that you have to set goals. So pandemic is difficult, but higher education is usually difficult for an average person. When you move from high school, especially in a culture like Sri Lanka, where you are coming from a teacher-centered environment, unless you went to a good international school, you're used to the teacher telling you what to do. You are not reflective about your thoughts. You're not thinking about how you should go about doing your learning, right? So these come they're not natural for our Sri Lankan students, right? So always think about the thoughts that you have, the feelings that you have, and how you behave towards these goals that you set. Setting goals are important, right? How many of y'all have personal goals? I had weight loss goals. That goal is still there. I have healthy goals. I have travel goals. I have saving money goals. I have goals that I would like to fill my life with experience. Just the same way, you should have academic goals as well. You should, right? So the academic goal cannot be, I want to get the degree, I want to get the master's. No, you have to break down these goals and you have to think about module by module, section by section for each module, those kind of goals. Please don't think that goals should be the ultimate completion of the degree or the diploma or the master's, right? So moving forward, self-regulation. So this academic self-regulation is known as strategies that students use to control the factors influencing their learning. Now, learning can be influenced through our personal factors, the feelings that we have, the motivation that we have, right? And the learning that we do, right? On the other hand, it can be environmental as well, right? So if you don't have a peaceful environment where you're not disturbed, it's difficult to study, isn't it? If you don't have the proper lighting, if you don't have the proper data connection, when the data keeps dropping or there is no signal, it's a little bit difficult to study, right? Rachel is laughing, right? So those are some of the learning environments that we have to be able to control, right? So there are many factors that influence our learning, and we as learners, especially as adult learners, now children can't really do this much. Parents get involved and parents kind of create the environment, teachers create the environment. But as adults, as matured people, we should be able to establish what we call this optimum condition for learning. Can someone tell me what is your optimum condition for learning? What do you think your optimum condition is?
So for me, I am very alert after 6 p.m. So I would push my studying to after 6 p.m. That's one way I would get myself to be very optimum. And I'm mostly better off studying alone. I like silence with a little bit of background sound. So maybe a little bit of classical music. That's another way. And yeah, for now, those are the two ways I usually get myself to work at my best.
I'm actually, I think it's a silence environment. I prefer in silence.
At home.
Like I said, I like the silent. Actually, I am staying these days at home. Normally, I'm in my boarding. So I prefer staying at boarding when I study because it's so easy for me to study at there.
Yes, I also I prefer to study in a silent place, and the background should be very silent. And also, I would like to study after 9 p.m. I can't keep my attention or the what we call the ion in the evening, afternoon, morning. I can't study. Most of the time I use midnight likewise.
Right. So when we study, we have to always be able to remove the obstacles that we face, anything that interferes with our learning. So one of the main things that interferes with your learning is the mobile phone. I read a research where the millennials, they actually, how many times a day do they unlock their phones? How many times a day does an average your age person unlock the phone?
2000 times.
2000 times. I think it was about 75 times. That means every 5 minutes they unlock it and they check it. Every 5 minutes, something like that, right? So I believe that technology helps us study well, but at the same time, this mobile phones, these smartphones kind of distract us all the time as well, right? So as a self-regulated learner, you have to control your cognition, your behavior, and the effects of it, right? So one of the first things I would like you to practice is to be able to set and to be able to define your learning goals. Now, these learning goals, they do not necessarily always have to be about getting a distinction in your assignment. That is not a learning goal, right? So learning goals are when you take your teaching and learning plan, or when you take your syllabus, there will be week 1, week 2, or there would be unit 1, unit 2, right? So for you to be able to perform well in your exams, you have to, I personally believe, cover all of those units at some level. You can't just go and tackle only the assignment question or the mock exam questions that are coming. That is what we call the shortcuts of learning. When you take shortcuts of learning, I believe that you kind of suffer more, because you're not building the knowledge, right? To answer an assignment or to be prepared for an exam, you have to have the roots for the tree to come. So if the tree is opening branches, the root system has to be there well, right? So one thing I've observed with my Sri Lankan students is they don't get that foundation correctly, right? So always be able to set your learning goals. So you are given a document with your teaching and learning plan. You're given a syllabus, weekly schedule. Take that and just not seriously, okay, I'm going to read this chapter, I'm going to read this article, I'm going to watch this video, I'm going to revise the lesson that I do. That's it, very casually, not seriously. 1 hour, 2 hours, you're done. Okay, you don't have to think, oh my gosh, I have 20 weeks of learning to do. You don't have to think like that. Just little by little, this week, syllabus, this section, book, this section, I will complete it. And set yourself a target. Yeah, stick to that target, right? Reward yourself when you accomplish that target. But don't let those targets build up, right? I think, once again, the Japanese side of me, we can't have many things pending. We have to get it done then and there. So if there's an email, we have to reply then and there. If there's a message, we have to reply then and there. If there's a deadline, we have to meet that deadline. But then there's a half Sri Lankan side of me as well, just the same way Sadawa-san has the half Brazilian side. So we might be in between this. But if you meet a traditional Japanese person, can't, because not meeting that deadline, not finishing that task, not sending that email causes different levels of anxiety and different levels of stress. But we have the extreme in our Sri Lankan culture, which I have observed. They absolutely have no stress by putting it on pending until the last minute, right? So when you get your syllabus, when you get your teaching and learning plan, or when you get your study materials, tiny, tiny goals, okay? Try to set tiny goals and define those goals. How will you be able to look back and say, I have achieved this task? So you have to be able to give a definition for the goals that you set as well. Then the second thing we do is we activate some relevant strategies and tactics, which I would introduce you in the next slide, right? Behaviors. So you enact, you monitor, you regulate, and you evaluate your learning, right? So we set goals, we bring in some tactics to achieve those goals, we monitor. So it's not enough just to set goals and get the task completed. You have to look back and think, how did I achieve that task? How did I attempt that task? You have to reflect. Did I manage my time well? Did I say that I'm going to start at 9 p.m. in the night on this day, but I actually started it on 11 p.m. on this day, right? And you have to regulate, and you have to always evaluate the learning that happens from those learning goals that you set, right? So you're kind of supervising your own self. You're like the manager of your own learning, right? And then if something goes wrong, You have to be able to persevere. This means you have to be able to sustain, right? You have to also self-motivate yourself, right? Self-motivation is one of the most important things as an adult learner, and when a global pandemic like this is happening. So never believe that an external source can motivate you 100%. Yes, they can, temporary, but at the end of the day, it's your own self-motivation, your own self-effort, and the fact that you believe. So you have to believe as well. I can do this. I can finish this. I can finish this chapter. I can summarize this lesson. I can outline. You have to believe. You have to do self-talk as well. I do this a lot. Sometimes I wake up, I'm overwhelmed. I have so much to do. I have lectures to prepare to. I have assignments to mark. I have to prepare assessment briefs, and I have to do the writing. And I have 2 Rottweilers who are quite demanding for attention, right? And I like that attention, so that distracts me a lot, right? So you all have your different levels of distractions, and staying at home, right? Sometimes it's easy if we can go 9 to 5 job, because those distractions don't exist. There are no housework to be done. There is no cooking to be done. The raining, we have to go and close the window. These kind of distractions don't exist, right? But deep down inside, you have to tell yourself, I can do this. I'm able to finish this. I'm capable of understanding this theory, right? I have enough of time. I will put off something. I won't go out. I won't meet my friends. I will put off my phone, right? You have to keep self-talking as well until you believe truly from within that you're able to finish and achieve those learning goals. Are we clear? So these are the principal concepts that we have in self-regulated learning, right? So you have to be able to always have a set of strategies and tactics. These are tools as a learner that you bring when you go to study, right? So while you're studying, the purpose is to achieve that learning goal, but you still monitor how you achieve it. So a lot of reflections, a lot of thinking about the actions that you do, right? But never negative self-talk, never putting yourself down, always positive. Are we clear? Yeah, and always believing that you're capable, you have all the resources, access, you have the brain, you have the English, right? You have a good family environment, you have the internet that connects, and you have access to download. You have within you and around you everything you need to achieve those learning goals. Now you have to self-talk yourself into this, okay? So moving forward, right? Higher achieving students, the ones that self-regulate, they have more rules. Do we have rules in our studies? What are rules when it comes to your academic environment? How many of you have rules? I have a lot of rules. I force myself down to sit and read and highlight and summarize. I won't do anything else until I finish that task. It's not the most fun thing to do sometimes. My family can be going on trips, having coffee, having barbecues, going on boat rides. So that's at the background. I wish I was there. I wish I was there. But no, I have rules. So if I need to get something done, I am extremely disciplined. I will focus on it, right? So reflect and think, what are your study rules? Do you have set times every day, every other day? How many hours have you put aside? Do you stick to those rules? You have to be very honest with yourself, right? And these rules are set in a sequence. So the ultimate goal is there to finish the degree, to finish the master's, but we have to break it down semester by semester. We have to break it down subject by subject. We have to break it down lesson by lesson, theory by theory. It's a hierarchy. You can't get to the big goal that you want unless you climb the ladder step by step, right? So we hierarchically organize these rules, and we have strategies that we reinforce into these rules, and we have sub rules as well, right? So high achieving students have more cognitive processes and results, right? They justify their strategies in a much more complex sequence, and they connect it to each other, right? So the connection is, now we're trying to finish our qualification, or we're trying to attain a good mark for all the modules that we have in this semester. right? But we can't get there if you don't understand the connection of how to do it, right? So regulating your learning environment, setting those tiny goals, having rules that you stick to, those help connect little by little. And that example that I told you about reading an article for 3 hours, not understanding everything, if you lack the prior knowledge, you have to do yourself a favor and go and attain that prior knowledge, right? So if there is a background reading that you have to do for you to be able to understand what you're supposed to understand, you have to give yourself the luxury of going and doing that. If you skip that, you don't make these connections. Then things start getting a little bit difficult. Then the motivation drops, the dedication drops, right? So moving forward, these are some of the strategies and tactics self-regulated learners use. I want you all to look at them. I'm going to read them. Write down what you have on one side and what you don't have on another side. Do you have simple focusing? Do you have structured focusing? Do you hypothesize? If this happens, will this happen? Do you summarize? Do you use mental imagery? So like a mind map in the head, like a tree diagram in the head, like a flow chart in your head. Do you use the keyword method, right? Do you chunk? Do you do positive self-talk? Do you ask questions from your friends? Do you ask questions from your lecturers? Do you generate an overview when you're studying? Do you reread? Do you say it in your own words? Do you paraphrase material while you're reading, trying to, understand it better? Do you make predictions? If this theory is used in this manner, can it be used in another manner in this setting? You imagine the content. So I'm learning this theory right now. How can I use it in my classroom? How can I use it with my students? Do you set goals for learning? And based on your goal, do you vary the style that you learn? So take a couple of minutes. What do you have and what do you don't have? All right, so let's move on, right? So some more questions that you should ponder about. So I want you to think about the characteristics of what makes an effective learner. So now, during a pandemic, many students think about, oh, I can't get through, it's too much of stress. There's so much of corona stress by consuming social media. Like, I think I felt that too in the beginning, like the news was just, bombarding us with one corona case here, one isolation case here, another quarantine case here. Then came all the Black Lives Matter. That was very disturbing. I completely stayed away from Facebook watch during that time because I couldn't fathom how people can, do things like that. And then the US election, right? So you have to be able to, I know it's a stressful situation, be able to remove yourself from those distractions. So now if someone asks me how many corona cases are there, I absolutely don't know. Someone has to call and tell me that we are going into a lockdown, because I don't think at the end of the day, if my food is sorted and my electricity and my internet is working, it really doesn't matter. We don't have to stress about it. We have to take care of ourselves. But panicking about it, developing anxiety towards, especially the media, the way they influence our thought process, right? So ineffective learning and effective learning. I want you all to ponder and think about this as well. So what are the characteristics of an effective learner and what are the characteristics of an ineffective learner?
One thing I see in an effective learner is they question everything. They ask why for everything, like why this, why that, and they keep on questioning up until they get a satisfactory answer. And they don't need, like at some points, like you said earlier, you need motivation sometimes from external forces, but it's mostly internally driven, where you learn to find some sort of motivation within yourself to actually get up, open your laptop, open the assignment and read. So that itself takes a lot of motivation. So basically I would say that is also a very important characteristic. And one more thing is they know how to manage their time. Sometimes it's very hard to focus, especially like you said, learning it's very, like, especially online learning nowadays, it's very challenging. I mean, we are supposed to be the tech savvy generation, and yet when it comes to online learning, we are like, we don't know what's happening, where we are. Oh my gosh, we are lost. And you know this with experience with us. So, but when it comes to learning, sitting and listening to 3 hours, 4 hours worth of lectures, and at the end, we do grasp the concept, but still we are like confused, because I think from small days we were taught about that traditional classroom based learning environment. So this is completely relying on this is completely new for us. So I believe finding that drive within yourself to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and to go sit, freshen up or whatever, just open your assignment and start even reading is a huge win.
Hi, Miss. Mostly I have seen that they do not do their homework.
Okay. Ineffective learners don't do their homework. Okay.
And they are not tend to ask much questions as well.
They don't ask questions also. Good.
Yeah,
Very good.
Yeah, normally when I introduce them the next week's lesson, I want them, read about it, about the concept, and revise the previous knowledge.
Come prepared.
Yeah. Now always they have excuses for that also.
What are the excuses usually?
Like saying didn't have time, or yeah.
How old are these students, Nishanti? Because these are children, right?
I have ranged from year 5 to 11. That means from 10 years to 16 years.
10 years to 16 years. Okay,
yes.
Good. And you
and
observe.
Rarely I find, normally in my classes, rarely I find that type of students as well.
They're
normally,
all effective then.
Are working. Yeah.
They're good students then. I mean, effective in their learning.
Yes, mostly I have good students.
Good. You're lucky then. You're lucky. In higher education, we have the number 4 more than the number 3. That means we have ineffective learners more than the effective learners. I think there could be a difference between the way we teach, because we just lecture, and when you're dealing with maybe 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, the learning or the assessment is also a little bit different, right? So moving forward, so another question is characteristics of students who have learning goals, right? Do they persevere? Do they experience less anxiety? Do they use more strategies? And do they attribute their success to controllable causes? So their success is attributed to effort, not to luck. What do you think? So somebody who has the characteristics of learning to learn, not learning to perform, not studying to get marks. Somebody who is learning to actually absorb the knowledge. Do they persevere? Do they experience less anxiety? Do they use more learning strategies? And their outcome is a result of the effort that they do and not luck. All of the answers should be yes. So all of these answers, the fact that they go through, they sustain, the cause of their outcome is the effort. All of these are effective learners in terms of the cognitive as well as the factors that they control, right? So I'm now hinting what you all should be doing, right? So self-regulated learning, it not only helps adults, college students, even younger learners, even elementary level students can be taught how to self-regulate, right? So like I stressed before, self-regulated learners, they succeed better academically, right? And they look at their future very optimistically. It's not negative. You don't self-talk, oh, I'm going to fail, I can't do this, this is too much. No, you have to micromanage the learning goals. You have to manage your tactics, and they follow a learner-centered approach to teaching. That means that they don't rely on their lecturer or their teacher to tell them what to learn or how to learn. They're independent, right? And this self-regulated learning takes us to what we call lifelong learning skills, right? So even if you become a practitioner, even if you become a lecturer or a teacher or a researcher, whatever the profession that you become, you have to continuously learn. You have to be updated with the current knowledge, the current developments, right? So self-regulated learning connects you to having these habits and these, what you call, tactics or these strategies that will help you become a lifelong learner as well, right? So I'm promoting this during a pandemic. I promote them usually, but I think it's utmost important during a COVID time to be able to have this. So the benefits you gain from becoming a self-regulated learner is obviously your performance would increase. You generate better ability to think and to think deeply. Thinking is very important. Huh? Thinking about thinking is also important, right? You develop a way of consciously focusing on your learning. Now, sometimes we are looking like we are focusing, but we are not really focusing. Yeah. Sometimes you all are looking at me as if you all are focusing, but you are in a different, yeah, I know that, right? It creates professionalism, it leads to motivation, and it leads to adult success. So we have to always remember that we are responsible adults. I hope everyone is adults, other than even 18, 19 in Sri Lanka, we consider as adults, right? So what are the 6 components of self-regulation? This part is a little bit important, right? You have to ask yourself the motivation. Why am I doing this? Then the how, the methods of learning. How am I learning? And your time. When am I learning? When am I strategically studying? Your physical environment, where? Are you doing it in the living room while your siblings are running around and TV is going out? Are you in a peaceful area without distraction? And then your social environment. Whom are you studying with? Or when you need help, whom do you reach out to? Do you reach out to your peers? Do you reach out to your family? Do you reach out to your lecturers, other academics? And how do you monitor? So the monitoring of the performance is the what, right? So these 6 components, you have to kind of put it into yourself, right? So motivation, the methods of learning, how you use your time, where you use your time to learn, whom you learn with or whom you reach out when you can't learn, and how you monitor your performance. So majority may not be monitoring the performance, right? I want you all to develop that habit as well of monitoring the performance, right? So let's talk a little bit about motivation. So without goals, you can't have motivation. So goals, like I told you before, is not about the distinction or not about the grades, but learning goals. Being able to absorb knowledge, being able to create knowledge, right? And the most successful people, they know how to motivate themselves, even if they don't feel like doing it, okay? Now we sometimes have this habit, I think even the younger generation, if you don't feel like doing it, many of you all have the luxury of not doing it. Am I correct? There are parents who take care of it. There are siblings who take care of it. Yeah. But in a developed nation, even a 3-year-old has to go and put their plate away. They have to go and fetch their own water. They have to wash themselves. They have to dress themselves. They have to feed themselves. They have to sleep alone. But I feel that in Sri Lanka, the parenting itself, children are raised in a way where they are extremely loved, but they are not raised to be independent individual adults. Okay, I'm not going to criticize or I'm not going to judge, but when we have children like that come into adulthood, when they don't feel like doing something, they just give up so quickly. That endurance is not there, right? So to think about yourself as well, when you feel something is difficult, now I'm not perfect. If you put me in a setting where I have to exercise, I cannot pull this through. I cannot pull it. If I don't feel like doing the task, I will not do the task. That's me when it comes to exercising. But deep down inside, I know that I have to exercise, but I can't, right? So the same advice might be applicable for me here. Do a little bit every day, right? Build on the techniques. But if you put me in an academic setting, give me articles to read, study for 12 hours, I'm very comfortable, right? So we have to be able to motivate ourselves even if we don't feel like doing it. So self-motivating techniques include setting goals and positive self-talk. So we already told you about this positive self-talk, right? I can do this. I'm capable of doing this, right? And then moving forward, you have some learning strategies. So these are basically your toolkits. So if you get a house handyman, he comes with all these tools. I can't come up with the names right now. He has a hammer, he has a screwdriver, like that. He has a toolkit. So as an adult learner, you also have to gather yourself these toolkits, right? And most of the time, students believe that they are not successful because of the ability that they have. They think that I'm not smart enough, I can't do this. But in reality, majority of us are not taught how to learn. We don't know these strategies, right? So go through them, do some background reading, reflect. So the goal setting, the environment, the time, the monitoring, the social interactions, try them one by one. And you may need different techniques, different strategies for you to be able to sit for a sitting exam, to be able to attempt the objectives of those exams, and then assignments may be very different, right? Do I need to explain the use of time, how important time is? We have 24 hours a day. I sleep about 8 hours on a good day. So 1/3 of my life I have slept. 1/3, if you calculate like that, and sometimes I feel guilty for it. Once I read a quote, you can sleep after you die. So those people only sleep 3-4 hours a day. Sleep is for the people who are dead, it said. And that kind of hit a bell in my head. And I'm sleeping 8 hours. Maybe I shouldn't sleep 8 hours. These days I sleep 5 hours. I don't have the luxury of 8 hours, right? So if I sleep 5 hours a day, I am left with 19 hours. And if I work 8 hours a day, I'm left with 11 hours. 11 hours. How much can you do with 11 hours for your studies? 11 hours, huh? You can do a lot. You don't need to put 11 hours. If you can actually manage and just constantly put 2 to 3 hours every day, you're going to be fine, right? So time management, the skill of time management is something that you developed. You're not born with time management. In Japan, we are brainwashed to manage our time, right? I've told you all these examples many, many times. If you are late 1 second to work, they cut 15 minutes of your salary. So if I'm supposed to report at 10, if I report at 10 and 1 second and I don't have a valid reason such as the train was delayed and I get a slip, right? Or I had a doctor's appointment, then still they will cut it from my annual pay, right? So we are forced to manage time. So if the 10:43 train is coming, the train will come at 10:43, then the train will come at 10:45 again. But so many people run for that 2-minute difference because they can't afford that 2 minutes from 10:43 to 10:45, because if they have to report at 11:30, they would like to report at 11:20. Otherwise, socially, we are judged for coming on time. So once a manager told me 5 minutes early is 10 minutes late. 5 minutes early is 10 minutes late, right? So 9 o'clock appointment, if you go 5 to 9, you're 10 minutes late. And the more junior you are, the earlier you have to go to that meeting. Those are cultural things, right? So as a population, I think Japan as a society, we are forced to manage our time. And I love that about myself, because I have never been late for a lecture. Never. I am usually 9 o'clock, 9 o'clock. But my students are usually late. Not you students. I find my teacher students to be very much on time, and I'm very proud to say that, right? So even with studying, always manage the time. The students who manage their time tend to have higher grades. That should be motivating. And the students who have poor time management, they are very much preoccupied in the last minute. So 48 hours before the exam, 72 hours before the assignment, and they are doing last minute work, which ends up producing poor results, right? So believe it or not, time management, I think according to research, is one of the most success factors for higher performing students in university. The ones who are not high in intelligent, or the ones who don't have high levels of cognition or anything, if they manage their time, even the average student performs better in higher education, in a college setting, right? And then next we have the physical and the social environment that we regulate. So like I told you, who do you ask for help? When do you ask for help? And the environmental restructuring. So your peaceful, non-destructive environment where you can put in 2-3 hours a day is more than enough, right? So moving forward, you have to be able to monitor your performance. Monitoring. Now we are so used to having other people monitor our performance. We want our mother to monitor. Is she studying or not? Did she wake up on time? Parents have to come and wake you up, get you out of bed. Now in Sri Lanka, I know some of my friends, their mother feeds them rice and curry while the daughter studies, right? And if there are mosquitoes, the mother is chasing the mosquitoes while the daughter studies to get into university. That's how loving and dedicated mothers are. Then they wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning to get the daughter out of bed, make her a cup of tea, yeah, take her to the bathroom, force her to wash and get her to study. As much as that is such a good thing coming from the mama, my mama didn't do any of these for me, right? I'm the kind of daughter who would make breakfast and coffee for mama and then get my studying done, right? So as much as mothers are loving like that, it does not foster independent learners. It does not foster responsible adult learners. So we see this. So when they move into higher education, they can't adapt to that self. There's no one to come and monitor you, right? So during this diploma or this undergraduate degree that you're doing, you have to own. You have to be able to monitor and own your own performance. You have to be able to self-coach yourself and self-mentor yourself. So coaching usually we receive from someone else, mentoring we receive from someone else, but self-regulated learning, you're coaching yourself, you're mentoring yourself, you're motivating yourself. And another thing is that you have to be able to critique your own performance. So don't accept what you're doing to be perfect. Critique it. I don't think I'm so good in this section. Maybe I should try a little bit harder. Did I do that correctly? Let's go and double check it again. Did I spend enough time in that section? Is this the best I can do? Should I cut down on my sleep? Should I cut down on my social media? Those are the questions I ask myself. Should I get more coffee? Right? And then once you're monitoring and mentoring and critiquing yourself, you should be able to make the changes to achieve those goals, right? So self-regulated learning is goal setting, doing the action, monitoring, evaluating, and readjusting so that we can achieve that goal. It's a process. It goes in a cyclical process and you have self-feedback. Now, majority of us wait for others to give us feedback. So during a pandemic and during this online learning environment, the opportunities to receive face-to-face feedback, majority of the time you have to email. Then the issue at hand, by the time the reply comes, you can't even remember what the problem was of the assignment sometimes. I have experienced that. We don't get a spontaneous answer unless you have WhatsApp with your lecturer, right? We have to wait for 48 hours. In Japan, 2 days is a 48 hours, but in Sri Lanka, usually it's about 4 to 5, 6 working days to get a reply, not 2 working days. And weekends, we never get a reply. So delayed answers. So you have to be able to do self-generated feedback as well, right? So just to, come to a summary and to move forward with, finishing this whole session up. So having to do higher education or be enrolled in higher education during a pandemic has an extra level of distractions. So the media distracts us, the anxiety from our family members, the worries, the financial concerns that they have. People have lost, they have experienced pay cuts, some have lost jobs, right? So now I think that if I'm put in a challenging situation like that, that is an even more reason for me to focus more. Because I'm strengthening my opportunities, the future opportunities I have, if I am more qualified. And if I perform well in those qualifications. But that's me. But maybe someone else would think, oh, it's so stressful, I can't, it's overwhelming, we are going through so much of trouble. But you have to be able to change the lens of how you see this, right? So in higher education, obviously work is much more harder than in your high school or your A levels. There is more competition. The job market is extremely competitive. Someone who is well qualified with experience has a higher chance of getting the job position than someone who has no experience or no qualification, right? Students are supposed to be self-motivated. So when you say to your lecturer, I can't do this, miss, I don't know what I'm doing, you get blamed because we expect you to be an adult and be self-motivated. There are no study guides. There are no step 1, step 2, step 3 to tackle this problem. You have to figure it out yourself. Instructors don't give you the answers. Majority of the instructors don't even talk about the assessment. We just deliver the syllabus. You're on your own. And during a pandemic, you're on your own even more because you don't have your friends. And because of this online environment, we can't really bond unless we meet in a face-to-face class and have a cup of Milo or hot tea, have some, savories and break that ice. In a pandemic, we are very much on, I miss my colleagues, I miss my fellow lecturers. It's actually, it's kind of depressing, but you have to focus. You have to focus and you have to always tell yourself this, like everything else, won't last forever. Pandemic won't last forever. It will get better. Vaccines are coming in, right? So some of the self-talk that you can do, some of the statements that you can tell yourself is, I can self-motivate myself when I need to. So if you're having a hard day, if you're having a stressful day and you're feeling down, you have to be able to stop for a moment, pause and say, I can do this. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to put 2 hours. I'm going to time it. And I'm not going to get any distractions while I put in those 2 hours. You have to tell yourself, I can use different study methods for different types of assignments. You have to be able to tell yourself this. So if you know those study strategies, those tactics, right? And you have to be able to confidently say, I plan how to use my time, right? Now for me, I'm a morning person. I can wake up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, have no food until lunch, have like 3, 4 cups of coffee, and I can put in 5 hours completely, fully focused. But if I try to read anything or even watch a movie at this time, I sleep. So I'm actually not a good entertainer at night. Even if family and friends come over, I can't even focus on conversations. I go into a, what do you call, a brain fog. When the sun goes down, my brain gets foggy. But when the sun comes up, I'm like, okay, let's get that book out. Let's get that 1,000 words written. I'm like fully, and everyone else around me are like zombies, right? So if you're a morning person, you have to manage your time during the morning. And if you're a night owl, majority of my students are night owls. They send me messages at 4 o'clock in the morning, having questions sometimes. I completely put it on silent. Yeah, otherwise it breaks my sleep, right? And you have to be able to confidently say that you can modify or you can change your environment so you can concentrate, right? So in a non-pandemic situation, if it's too distracting to stay at home, I go to a coffee shop just to, change my environment. Or I would go to a park if I was in Japan. Just sit in the park, get the reading done, relax while you're doing it. Or change the room. So sometimes if I'm alone at home, I go from the living room to the bed, to the dining table, then another chair in a different room, because that change in the environment helps me focus a little bit more rather than sitting in one place for a few hours, right? And you have to be able to confidently say, if I need anything, I know how to ask for help, and I know that I seek help. That means that you're not shy in asking for help, right? And once you're done, you're able to evaluate and to see your progress and judge honestly, genuinely, how far have you come to achieve the goals that you set academically and personally. So it's a very honest, reflective process that you do, right? Okay. So some of the things that we do for self-instruction, right? You can train yourself to do this. For example, what is it that I have to do? So when you take all the study material, what is it that I have to do? You're talking out loud to yourself, but make sure your family is not around. Otherwise, they might think that you're going crazy. Yeah, I do this. I sit down. Okay, what do I have to do now? Okay, let's do this now, right? And then I focus. I say, I need to pay attention to what I'm doing, right? Sometimes I look at the phone, start chatting, half an hour is gone, right? Half an hour gone chatting, unwanted stuff. I need to pay attention. So I kind of go offline. There are days I go offline for 3 days sometimes, and only people can reach me through emails or phone calls. But phone calls also I ignore. That's when the urgency kicks in, right? So self-evaluate yourself, ask questions such as, am I doing the things in the right order? And then coping, right? So sometimes things don't go perfectly. Majority of the time, we don't achieve the targets that we set. That is very normal. And you tell yourself, I'm going to try this again. I need to try this again. I didn't get it right. So that's also a conscious awareness from your reflections, that you're aware that you didn't really understand the study material, or you didn't understand the theory, or you didn't understand the question. I think that's very important, to be able to be aware of what we are not doing correctly, right? So self-regulated learners do this, and they go through a psychical process of changing their behavior, right? So the first thing, like I explained you, is we observe ourselves and we evaluate ourselves as a learner. We set goals, we try to go achieve those goals, and we monitor. We strategically plan and we strategically implement. So you're not only monitoring your goals, you're also monitoring the strategies that you implement to achieve those learning goals, right? And then the strategic outcome is usually the learning that we achieve. You have to monitor that as well. So there's a lot of monitoring going on here, right? So moving forward, there is just a very casual, it's casual for me, may not be so casual for you. So this is a model in self-regulation in an academic context, right? So this is most probably a conceptual framework developed. So the outcome is academic performance. You have to be able to have motivational strategies, behavioral strategies. So that's the time management, the physical environment, and the social environment. The motivational strategies, the goals that you set, your emotions, and the efforts that you put in. Those influence the textbooks, the lectures, the preparation that you do, and therefore it also influences the academic performance. Then this academic performance kind of influences the motivation that we have, the performance influences the behavior that we have. So it's kind of correlated and interconnected, right? So just to wrap up, self-regulation is something like someone is watching over you. But who is that person who is watching over you? Yourself. So you're studying and there's someone, your other dimension, maybe in another parallel universe, that person is monitoring you and giving you feedback, assuring you, judging you, critiquing you, motivating you. So there's someone, you standing here watching over your study. So that is what self-regulation is, right? So some of the things that you do to do this, to be able to self-monitor, you can keep academic learning journals. I remember when we were teenagers, we used to write down what happened. Maybe a boy looked at me and that was exciting and I come and write it down. I had chocolates, oh, that chocolate was so tasty, and you write it down. I remember a journal, and that journal was locked. Diary, nobody can touch that diary. So you can do an academic learning journal. So you have your goals. How did you try to achieve those goals? What went well? What didn't go well, right? Set the goals, plan your learning activities, generate questions while you read, before you read, and after you read. So this self-questioning is one of the most strongest things you can practice, right? Do a task analysis of a problem and then manage your time, manage your time, manage your time, manage your time, manage your time. So the time management is the, yeah, for Sri Lankan students, they're extremely smart, and if they can actually get that will to get going, they perform so well. But this time management is what I observe that they don't do, right? So I want you all to reflect on what you learned today and think about why academic self-regulation is important, right? I want you to reflect about your own beliefs that you currently have that's preventing you from being a self-regulated learner, right? And then I want you to think about the new challenges that you would encounter during this pandemic, and how maybe these 6 components that you learned about self-regulation, so motivation, goal setting, social environment, physical environment, monitoring, maybe how you can use these to tackle these challenges that we are facing during this pandemic, and especially being an online learner where we don't have face-to-face contact with our classmates or our lecturers or even the institution. Okay, all right. So that's it from me. Thank you very much for listening, right? Any questions?
So I'll wrap it up. Just before I get down to the wrapping up, I just want to talk about a little bit about what Miss Nicola said. I'm not going to take a lot of time, I promise. Miss Nicola basically eyed us down to everything that we do as ineffective students. And I'm pretty sure most of you related to it. But the best part about that, her highlighting them, is the solutions we got for it. So the outcomes that I jotted down for my own self, don't perceive yourself to be weak because you have untapped potential. You just need to tap into it. You base yourself on what you have done and what you know about you. But what you don't know is called potential. You need to tap into it. And you're way more than what you think of yourself. Number two, ask for help, because what you see, somebody else sees it differently. And that widens your learning, it widens your perspective. So make sure you ask for help. And three, monitor yourself so you know where you stand. If you don't know where you stand, you're all over the place, right? And manage yourself and your time. Because if you don't manage your time, there's no balance in your life. You're always thinking time is against you, but it is not. If you balance it, everything's balanced. And carve out your distractions. The less distractions, the more time you're buying. You can actually buy time if you carve out your distractions. That's another logical way to buy time. And you are your own motivator. So do not depend on anyone for them to come and push you. You have to do it for your own self. So this is some of the valuable outcomes I took from Miss Nicola's session. Thank you very much, Miss Nicola. So now let's jump down to the main wrap up.
So thank you very much for your patience, students, and for your engagement to the end of the session. It was a long session. I wish my Japanese students had the same posture, the same attitude you have listening to an online lecture. I understand by my own experience that it's very hard to do that, but I'm really happy that you stick to the end of the session. Thank you, Nicola-san, for inviting me. Thank you, Trisho and Rashata-san, for inviting me for this experience. In fact, I think I learned more than I had contributed to this lesson. I'm taking away a lot of things. I hope we can have other opportunities to teach for Sri Lankan students. And if you happen to come to Japan in the future, I don't know. I hope we can meet and wish you a really, really good and bright future. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you
very much. And I also would like to add something, Ms. Nicola. So I also wish to thank the management and team of St. George Teacher Training Institute, because I think they're scheduled to finish at 6, but we took an extra hour and they are right there with us still. So thank you very much. And I also must personally thank Ms. Rashanta Fernando, Head of Academic Affairs, for consistently keeping in touch with us. Just before this event, she has been on the front end talking to us how we get about with this. Even last night, I was talking to her after 12 a.m. So thank you, Ms. Rashanta. And dear teachers, I truly hope this session made a difference to you. If it did, please attack the thumbs up button. Give us as many thumbs ups as possible. And I'm sure the thumbs ups are coming. And yeah, that's all I want to say.